In the heart of central Mexico, in a city that hums quietly with traffic, markets and church bells, there stands a hill that should not exist. It rises gently above the surrounding streets, covered in grass and scattered trees, its slopes worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. At the very top, a small colonial church looks out over the city of Cholula, its yellow walls glowing softly beneath the sun. Pilgrims climb the path that spirals upward toward its doors. Tourists pause halfway to catch their breath and admire the distant view of the volcanoes beyond the horizon. It appears peaceful, ordinary, natural. Nothing about the hill suggests mystery. Nothing about it suggests that beneath the soil lies one of the greatest architectural achievements in human history. Yet this hill is not a hill at all. Hidden beneath the grass and earth is the immense structure known as the Great Pyramid of Cholula, an ancient monument so vast that even today its true scale is difficult to grasp. The people who built it called it Tlachihualtepetl, a word from the Nahuatl language that translates quietly but profoundly as the man-made mountain. The phrase is not poetic exaggeration. It is literal. Beneath the surface lies the largest pyramid ever constructed on Earth. To understand the scale of what lies hidden here, one must first let go of the familiar image of pyramids rising sharply into desert skies. The most famous pyramids in the world, those of ancient Egypt, reach dramatically upward, their geometry cutting clean lines against the horizon. Their height defines them. Cholula is different. The pyramid here rises only about 25 meters above the surrounding plain. At first glance, that may seem almost modest. Many modern buildings easily surpass it. Even ancient temples elsewhere in the world tower higher. But height can be deceptive. What makes this structure extraordinary is not how high it rises, but how far it spreads. Its base stretches across roughly 300 meters from one side to the other. Imagine a structure so wide that its footprint alone covers more than 9 hectares of land. From above, the pyramid occupies a space comparable to dozens of football fields laid side by side. And within that enormous footprint lies a staggering volume of construction. Researchers estimate that the pyramid contains more than 4.5 million cubic meters of material. Layers of adobe bricks, packed earth, stone fragments, and plaster built up over centuries. By sheer mass, it surpasses every pyramid ever built in Egypt. Even the legendary Great Pyramid of Giza, the monument that has dominated human imagination for thousands of years, contains barely half the volume. Yet Cholula never became the global symbol of ancient architecture that Giza did. For most of history, the world simply did not know it existed. Over time, wind and rain softened the edges of the pyramid's terraces. Vegetation spread across its slopes, roots pushed into the ancient bricks. Soil gathered along the sides, slowly disguising the geometry that had once been unmistakable. Century after century, nature reclaimed the structure. The sharp lines of architecture blurred into the curves of landscape. The pyramid slowly became a hill. By the time Spanish conquistadors entered the region in the early 16th century, the transformation was complete. They arrived in a thriving city that had already been sacred for centuries. Temples filled the surrounding plains. Markets bustled with traders. Pilgrims moved through the streets carrying offerings for the gods. And rising quietly above the city was the hill. The Spanish did not see a pyramid. They saw a natural rise in the land, a convenient and beautiful place to build a church. In 1594, construction began on the sanctuary now known as the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de los Remedios. Its walls were raised directly atop the summit of the ancient structure, its bells ringing across a landscape that had once echoed with the rituals of entirely different gods. The symbolism was powerful, a Christian church standing above what had once been one of the most important ceremonial centers in ancient Mesoamerica. But the builders had no idea what lay beneath their feet. For generations afterward, people climbed the hill to attend mass, celebrate festivals, and watch sunsets over the valley. Children played on its slopes. Farmers worked the surrounding fields. None of them knew they were walking across the surface of a monument that had taken centuries to construct. A monument that contained layers of forgotten civilizations buried deep within its core. The truth remained hidden until the 20th century. In the 1930s, archaeologists studying the region began to suspect that the hill might not be entirely natural. The symmetry of its slopes raised questions. Certain exposed fragments of brick suggested something more deliberate beneath the surface. To test their theory, they began digging. Instead of excavating from above, which would have destroyed the church, they dug horizontally into the sides of the hill, carving narrow tunnels through the interior. What they discovered changed the understanding of the site forever. Within meters of the entrance, the tunnel walls revealed ancient brickwork. Then came plastered surfaces, then staircases, then entire architectural layers hidden beneath the soil. The hill was not a hill. It was a colossal pyramid, buried beneath centuries of earth and vegetation. As excavations continued, archaeologists extended the tunnels deeper and deeper into the structure. Eventually, the underground passages stretched for kilometers, revealing murals, ceremonial chambers, stairways, and entire phases of construction concealed within the monument's interior. It became clear that this was not merely a large pyramid. It was something far more complex. Inside the structure were multiple pyramids, each built atop the previous one across centuries of expansion. Civilizations had come and gone, and each had left its mark upon the same sacred mountain. The hill above the city was not the work of a single generation. It was the accumulated labor of hundreds of years, thousands of workers, millions of bricks, a monument that grew slowly, layer by layer, as new cultures inherited the sacred landscape and reshaped it according to their beliefs. Today, the church still stands at the summit, just as it has for more than 400 years. Visitors climb the same winding paths. They look out across the valley toward the distant peaks of the volcanoes. The city spreads below them in every direction. Most never realize that the ground beneath them is not natural terrain. It is architecture, a mountain built deliberately by human hands. And as astonishing as its scale may be, the deeper mystery is only beginning to emerge, because the structure hidden beneath the hill raises a question that archaeologists are still trying to answer. If ancient builders were capable of constructing something this enormous, why did they keep building it, generation after generation, for nearly 1,000 years? For generations, when people imagine the largest pyramid ever built, their thoughts travel instinctively to the sands of Egypt. Rising from the desert plateau west of Cairo stands the monument that has dominated human imagination for thousands of years, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its silhouette is unmistakable, a colossal geometric mountain of stone, rising sharply from the desert floor, its sides once gleaming with polished limestone that reflected the sunlight like a beacon across the Nile Valley. For nearly 4,000 years it stood as the tallest structure humans had ever created. At its original height of around 146 meters, it towered over every temple, palace and cathedral that would follow for millennia. Even today, the structure inspires awe. It is estimated that roughly 2.3 million limestone blocks were cut, transported and placed with astonishing precision during its construction. Many of these blocks weigh several tons each. Together they form a monument containing more than 6 million tons of stone, arranged so carefully that even modern engineers still debate the exact techniques used to raise it. The Great Pyramid became the symbol of human ambition in the ancient world. It represented power, divine kingship, cosmic order, and the ability of an early civilization to command enormous resources and labor. For centuries it seemed unmatched. But the true largest pyramid on Earth does not stand in Egypt. It stands thousands of kilometers away, in the fertile highlands of central Mexico. Hidden beneath the quiet slopes of a grassy hill in the city of Cholula lies a monument that surpasses even Giza in sheer physical scale.
the vast structure known as the Great Pyramid of Cholula. At first glance, the comparison seems impossible. After all, the Egyptian pyramid rises nearly 6 times higher than the structure buried beneath Cholula's hill. The Pyramid of Giza is a towering peak of stone designed to dominate the skyline and proclaim the power of the pharaoh who built it. Cholula does not rise dramatically into the sky, instead it spreads. Where Giza climbs upward like a spear thrust into the heavens, Cholula expands outward like an immense man-made plateau. Its slopes are gentle, its summit wide, its proportions closer to a natural mountain than to the sharp triangular geometry people normally associate with pyramids. Yet beneath those slopes lies an astonishing mass of construction.
The base of the Cholula Pyramid measures roughly 300 meters by 315 meters. That footprint alone covers an area approaching 95,000 square meters. To visualize it properly, imagine a square large enough to contain multiple modern city blocks, or several football stadiums placed side by side. Within that enormous base lies a total volume estimated at more than 4.5 million cubic meters. That figure is difficult to grasp at first. Numbers alone rarely capture the reality of scale. But compared directly with Egypt's greatest monument, the difference becomes striking. The Great Pyramid of Giza contains roughly 2.5 million cubic meters of stone. Cholula contains nearly twice that amount. In other words, if one were to dismantle the Egyptian pyramid block by block and transport the entire mass across the ocean, it would still not equal the total volume hidden within the hill at Cholula. By sheer bulk, the structure in Mexico is the largest pyramid humanity has ever built. Yet its form tells a very different story about the culture that created it. The Egyptian pyramid was conceived as a single project. It rose within the lifetime of one ruler, the pharaoh Khufu, during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. The monument was designed from the beginning to reach its final form, its geometry fixed before the first stone was placed. It was a finished vision from the start. Cholula followed an entirely different path. The monument beneath the hill was not built once, it was built many times. Its earliest construction began more than 2,000 years ago, when the region was already home to thriving communities connected by trade and religious tradition across Mesoamerica. At first, the pyramid may have been relatively modest, a ceremonial platform rising above the surrounding city, crowned by a temple where rituals were performed for the gods. But the story did not end there. Generations passed, new rulers came to power, religious traditions evolved, and instead of abandoning the old monument, the inhabitants of Cholula did something remarkable. They expanded it. A new, larger pyramid was built directly over the previous one, burying the earlier structure inside its core. The old temple disappeared beneath layers of adobe brick and earth, while a new temple rose above it. Then, decades or centuries later, the process happened again. Another expansion, another layer, another pyramid. Each stage of construction increased the monument's size. Each generation inherited the sacred mountain and chose to enlarge it, reshaping the structure while preserving the earlier forms buried within. Over time, the pyramid grew outward in every direction. Terraces extended, platforms widened, new stairways climbed toward ever larger temples. What had once been a single ceremonial structure gradually transformed into a colossal architectural complex. Archaeological research has revealed that at least 6 major construction phases took place over centuries. Within the pyramid's interior lie entire layers of earlier buildings, preserved like fossilized chapters of history sealed beneath the surface. Each one tells the story of a different era. Each one reflects the beliefs and artistic styles of the people who built it. The result is something almost unimaginable. Deep within the hill are multiple pyramids, stacked one inside another like vast architectural nesting dolls. A temple inside a temple, a monument inside a monument. The outermost structure, The hill that visitors see today is simply the final shell surrounding centuries of construction. It is not a single pyramid at all. It is a pyramid made of pyramids. This slow expansion created something that no other ancient civilization attempted on such a scale. Instead of building a monument once and leaving it unchanged, the people of Cholula treated their pyramid as a living structure, one that evolved along with the culture that worshipped there. The mountain grew as the city grew, and yet for all its enormous scale, the pyramid eventually vanished from human awareness. Nature softened its edges. Vegetation covered its surfaces. The geometry faded beneath centuries of erosion until the monument no longer resembled architecture at all. It became a landscape, a hill, a quiet rise above the town. But hidden within that hill remains the accumulated work of countless builders across nearly 1,000 years of history, a monument larger than the pyramids of Egypt, a sacred mountain shaped slowly by human hands. And the deeper archaeologists explore its interior, the more astonishing its story becomes. What are your thoughts about this? Share with us in the comments section. Long before European ships crossed the Atlantic, long before the rise of the Aztec Empire, a community in the fertile valley of central Mexico began building something extraordinary. The land around what is now the city of Cholula was already alive with movement. Farmers cultivating maize and beans, traders traveling dusty roads between distant settlements, priests tending shrines that connected the people to their gods. It was a place where cultures met and ideas traveled, where religious traditions grew deep roots in the landscape. Somewhere within that world, around the 3rd century BCE, the first stage of what would eventually become the Great Pyramid of Cholula began to rise. At the beginning, it may not have seemed extraordinary. Early Mesoamerican cities commonly built ceremonial platforms where temples could stand above the surrounding streets. These raised structures symbolized sacred mountains, places where the earthly world touched the divine. The earliest pyramid at Cholula was likely one such platform, a modest temple mound constructed from adobe bricks and packed earth, carefully shaped and plastered so that it stood prominently within the ceremonial heart of the city. But time did something unusual to this structure. Most monuments are built, used, and eventually abandoned. Their stones weather and their foundations sink. The generations that follow may construct new buildings elsewhere, leaving the old ones behind. At Cholula, something different happened. Instead of replacing the pyramid, the people expanded it. Decades passed. The city grew larger. New rulers rose to power, and new religious traditions evolved alongside the old ones. Rather than dismantle the existing monument, builders encased it within a larger structure. They extended the base outward, layering new walls and terraces around the earlier core. The original temple did not disappear. It remained buried inside, sealed within the growing mass of adobe and earth. This pattern would repeat again and again. Centuries rolled forward across the valley. Cultures rose and faded. Trade networks shifted across Mesoamerica, connecting distant cities with roads that carried obsidian, ceramics, textiles, and stories. Cholula remained an important place within this network, a city known for its religious significance and its role as a crossroads of cultures. With each transformation of power, the sacred pyramid was rebuilt, not destroyed, expanded. A new generation of builders would arrive at the site and see the ancient monument standing before them, already centuries old. To them, it was not merely architecture, it was sacred history made visible in brick and earth. The solution was not to replace it, but to enlarge it, an act that both honored the past and proclaimed the strength of the present. Workers carried thousands upon thousands of adobe bricks to the construction site. They stacked them in thick walls that surrounded the earlier structure. Earth and rubble filled the interior spaces, forming a solid mass capable of supporting yet another temple at the summit. Staircases climbed the pyramid's sides, guiding priests and pilgrims towards ceremonies held high above the city. Then the process would begin again. Over time, this extraordinary cycle created something archaeologists now recognize as a system of superimposed pyramids. Instead of a single monument built during one historical moment, the structure became a layered archive of architectural history. Each stage of construction sealed the previous one inside it. Each expansion preserved an earlier world within its walls. Deep inside the pyramid today lie entire structures that have not seen sunlight for more than a millennium. Staircases that once carried processions of worshippers now end abruptly in solid earth. Plastered walls that once gleamed with bright colors remain hidden behind layers of later construction. Small chambers that once echoed with ritual chants are now silent, sealed away like time capsules beneath the outer pyramid. Archaeologists who explored the interior during the 20th century began to uncover this hidden world. By tunneling through the massive structure, they discovered walls belonging to earlier pyramids buried deep within the core. Some of these walls retained fragments of ancient plaster. Others revealed architectural styles that differed dramatically from those visible in later layers. It became clear that the pyramid had grown through multiple major phases of construction. At least 6 distinct pyramids exist within the monument, each representing a different era in the city's history. The earliest was comparatively small, perhaps little more than a ceremonial mound. The next phases expanded its footprint outward, creating larger terraces and more elaborate staircases. Later stages introduced new, decorative features, new temple platforms, and increasingly monumental scale. Each layer represents the ambitions of a different generation. The builders of one era might have stood atop the pyramid believing it had reached its final form, only for their descendants centuries later to bury their work beneath an even larger structure. In this way, the monument slowly transformed into something extraordinary. It was no longer simply a temple platform, it was an evolving sacred mountain. And within that mountain were the physical traces of centuries of belief, ritual, and political power. To walk through the tunnels carved by archaeologists today is to pass through time itself. One moment, the passage follows a wall constructed hundreds of years after the birth of Christ. A few meters deeper, the architecture changes. The bricks shift in size and arrangement. The plaster shows a different style of finishing. The visitor is suddenly standing within a much older structure, built centuries earlier by a culture whose descendants may have already vanished by the time the later pyramid was constructed above them. Each wall represents a different civilization's attempt to connect with the divine. Each staircase once carried priests performing ceremonies that shaped the spiritual life of the city. Yet none of these earlier monuments were destroyed. They were preserved, entombed within the expanding pyramid. Over the centuries, this constant cycle of construction gradually transformed the original temple mound into an immense architectural mass spreading across the valley floor. What had begun as a relatively small ceremonial platform eventually grew into a structure so vast that it dwarfed every other building in the region. The pyramid became the center of the city's identity. Pilgrims would have approached it from distant settlements, seeing its terraces rise above the rooftops of Cholula long before they reached the city gates. Its temples would have been visible from miles away, gleaming with plaster and color beneath the sun. And yet, despite its monumental scale, the pyramid was never the work of a single culture. It was the product of centuries, an accumulation of human effort stretching across nearly 1,000 years. Civilizations rose, inherited the sacred mountain, and reshaped it according to their own vision. In doing so, they left behind a monument unlike any other in the ancient world, an architectural record of multiple societies layered within a single structure. But this realization raises a deeper mystery. For a city to expand the same pyramid generation after generation for nearly a millennium, it must have been more than just a building project. It must have been the heart of something far greater, a city whose spiritual life revolved around the mountain they were slowly creating, a place where religion, power, and architecture became inseparable. And to understand why such a monument could exist, one must first understand the extraordinary city that surrounded it. Long before the arrival of European explorers, before the rise of the Aztec Empire, and even before many of the great cities of Mesoamerica reached their height, there existed a place that drew people from across the region. In the fertile valley beneath towering volcanoes stood the ancient city of Cholula, a place where religion, trade, and power converged in a landscape shaped by belief. To the traveler approaching from the surrounding plains, the city would have appeared vast and alive with movement. Roads leading into Cholula carried merchants transporting pottery, obsidian blades, woven textiles, and food harvested from distant valleys. Farmers from nearby villages arrived with baskets of maize and beans. Pilgrims came on foot, traveling for days or even weeks to reach the sacred city whose temples were known across Mesoamerica. Cholula was not a small ceremonial town gathered around a single monument. At its height, the city spread across more than 150 hectares, a sprawling urban center filled with plazas, courtyards, shrines, and residences. The population may have numbered tens of thousands of people during certain periods, making it one of the most important settlements in the region. But the city was not defined solely by its size. What made Cholula extraordinary was its role as a spiritual destination. For centuries, it served as a pilgrimage center, a place where religion shaped the rhythm of everyday life. Visitors arriving from distant communities would have found a landscape filled with sacred architecture. Temples stood on raised platforms throughout the city, each dedicated to different deities and rituals that reflected the complex cosmology of ancient Mesoamerican cultures. Yet, above all of these structures, rose one monument that dominated the horizon. At the center of the city stood the immense structure now known as the Great Pyramid of Cholula. In its earliest centuries, the pyramid would have appeared far more geometric than it does today. The soft slopes now covered in grass were once sharply defined terraces coated in bright plaster. Stairways climbed the sides of the monument, guiding processions upward toward the summit. From a distance, the structure would have gleamed in the sunlight, its surfaces painted with colors that signaled its sacred importance. At the top stood temples where priests carried out ceremonies meant to sustain the balance between the human world and the forces of the cosmos. The pyramid was not merely a building, it was the heart of the city's spiritual life. For the people of Cholula, the structure represented something far deeper than architecture. Across Mesoamerica, pyramids symbolized sacred mountains. These artificial peaks echoed the natural mountains that dominated the landscape, towering formations believed to connect the earth below with the heavens above. Within this worldview, mountains were places where gods lived, where rain clouds gathered, and where the forces that sustained life flowed into the world of humans. By building pyramids, ancient societies were not simply constructing temples, they were recreating the cosmic order itself. The massive structure rising above Cholula embodied this idea. Each terrace lifted the temple closer to the sky, creating a symbolic pathway between the earthly world and the divine realm. Pilgrims who climbed the staircases toward the summit were not simply ascending a building, they were approaching a sacred axis that linked heaven, earth, and the underworld. The temples that crowned the pyramid were associated with one of the most significant deities in Mesoamerican belief systems, the feathered serpent known as Quetzalcoatl. This deity embodied a complex blend of symbolism. The serpent represented the earth and the forces that moved beneath it, while the feathers of the Quetzal bird symbolized the sky. Together, they formed a creature that bridged two realms, linking the ground below with the heavens above. The pyramid that served as the center of Cholula's religious life was a fitting place for such a deity, a structure designed to represent the meeting point of cosmic forces. Ceremonies held at the summit would have been elaborate and deeply ritualized. Fires burned within temple sanctuaries, their smoke rising into the sky. Priests wearing intricate garments carried offerings to the gods. These offerings might include food, precious objects, incense, or symbolic gifts meant to ensure fertility, rainfall, and prosperity for the surrounding lands. The sound of drums and conch shell trumpets would have echoed across the city during major festivals. Crowds gathered in the plazas below to witness rituals performed high above them. The pyramid served as both stage and symbol, a place where the sacred drama of the cosmos was reenacted through ceremony. Over time, as the pyramid expanded through repeated phases of construction, its role within the city became even more significant. Each enlargement reinforced the idea that Cholula was a place where the divine presence touched the world of humans. The monument grew alongside the city itself, becoming an increasingly powerful representation of religious authority and cultural identity. The influence of Cholula reached far beyond the boundaries of the valley in which it stood. Traders and pilgrims carried stories of the sacred city across Mesoamerica. Its temples became destinations for those seeking guidance, blessings, or participation in ceremonies connected to the feathered serpent deity. This spiritual significance explains why the pyramid was rebuilt repeatedly across centuries. Expanding the monument was not merely a construction project, it was an act of devotion. By enlarging the sacred mountain, each generation reaffirmed its connection to the gods and strengthened the city's position as a center of religious power. Yet this devotion also raises a practical question. The pyramids of Egypt achieved their immense scale through the use of massive stone blocks quarried from nearby cliffs. Workers carved limestone with copper tools and transported the blocks across the desert to build monuments that still dominate the skyline thousands of years later. But the builders of Cholula faced a different environment. Central Mexico did not offer vast quarries of soft limestone like those found along the Nile. The materials available to ancient builders were different, and so their solutions were different as well. Despite this challenge, the people of Cholula succeeded in creating the largest pyramid ever constructed by human hands. They did so without the towering stone blocks of Egypt. Instead, they relied on an entirely different form of engineering, one that transformed humble materials into a monument so massive that it eventually became indistinguishable from the landscape itself. Understanding how they achieved this requires looking beyond the religious meaning of the pyramid and into the remarkable construction methods that allowed an ancient civilization to build a mountain from earth and brick. When people picture the pyramids of antiquity, they often imagine colossal blocks of stone rising in precise rows beneath a desert sun. The image is deeply tied to the monuments of Egypt, where builders carved immense limestone blocks and stacked them into structures that still dominate the skyline of the Giza plateau. Those pyramids were engineered with carefully cut stone, fitted together with astonishing precision, forming monuments that feel almost eternal in their solidity. The immense structure rising above the ancient city of Cholula was built according to a very different philosophy. The builders of the Great Pyramid of Cholula did not rely on giant stone blocks hauled from distant quarries. Instead, they turned to materials that were readily available in the surrounding valley: earth, clay, sand, gravel, and fragments of volcanic rock. These humble substances, when combined with careful planning and extraordinary labor, allowed them to construct a monument larger in volume than any pyramid ever built in Egypt. At the heart of this method was adobe. Adobe bricks are created from a mixture of clay-rich soil, sand, water, and often organic materials such as straw. The mixture is pressed into wooden molds and then left to dry under the sun until it hardens into a dense brick. This method has been used for thousands of years in regions where stone is scarce, but earth is abundant. To modern observers, adobe may appear fragile. A single brick can be broken by hand, and exposure to rain can slowly erode its surface. Yet when these bricks are stacked by the thousands and reinforced with layers of earth and gravel, they create massive, stable structures capable of enduring for centuries. The builders of Cholula understood this principle well. Instead of shaping enormous stone blocks, they produced countless adobe bricks and arranged them into thick walls that formed the outer skeleton of each construction phase. Between these walls, they packed dense layers of soil, rubble, ceramic fragments, and volcanic stones gathered from the surrounding landscape. This combination of materials created a solid core that distributed weight evenly throughout the structure. Layer by layer, the pyramid grew. The interior was not hollow like a building filled with rooms and corridors. Instead, it functioned more like a compressed geological formation, a carefully engineered mass of earth and brick designed to support enormous weight. Once the structural layers were complete, the outer surfaces were coated with plaster and stucco. These coatings protected the underlying adobe from rain and wind, while also providing a smooth surface that could be painted with vibrant colors. In its original form, the pyramid would have looked dramatically different from the grassy hill that stands there today. The terraces would have been sharply defined, their surfaces gleaming beneath layers of white plaster. Decorative murals and colored pigments may have adorned the walls, transforming the monument into a brilliant focal point visible from miles across the valley. From the summit, temples and ceremonial platforms would have risen toward the sky, creating a dramatic architectural landscape above the city. The method of construction allowed workers to build at a scale that might have been impossible with massive stone blocks. Adobe bricks could be produced rapidly using local soil. Entire teams of laborers could mold bricks while others transported them to the construction site. Meanwhile, workers carrying baskets of earth and rubble filled the interior spaces, gradually raising the pyramid higher and wider with each phase of construction. This approach meant that the monument could expand continuously over generations. When new rulers decided to enlarge the sacred structure, they did not need to dismantle the earlier pyramid. Instead, they simply encased it within new layers of brick and earth, extending the base outward and raising fresh terraces above the older core. The process resembled the growth of a living organism. Each expansion added new mass to the outer shell, while the earlier stages remained preserved inside. Over centuries, this method created the immense structure whose volume eventually surpassed that of the pyramids along the Nile. Yet the same materials that made this growth possible also carried an unexpected consequence. Stone pyramids maintain their shape because their surfaces resist erosion. Wind and rain may wear them down slowly, but their basic geometry remains visible for thousands of years. Adobe, by contrast, is far more vulnerable to the forces of nature. As long as the pyramid remained maintained, its plaster renewed and its surfaces protected, it retained its sharp architectural form. But once the city declined and the rituals that sustained the monument came to an end, the protective layers began to deteriorate. Rain slowly dissolved the outer plaster. Wind carried dust across the terraces. Plants began to take root in small cracks along the slopes. With each passing year, nature softened the edges of the structure. The once straight lines of its terraces gradually blurred. Soil accumulated in shallow depressions. Seeds carried by birds and wind sprouted into grasses, shrubs, and eventually trees. The pyramid was slowly transforming. What had once been architecture began to resemble landscape. The terraces rounded into gentle slopes. Vegetation spread across the surface until the monument appeared indistinguishable from the natural hills of the valley. Generations passed, and the memory of the pyramid's original form faded. Travelers approaching the city no longer saw a towering temple platform. They saw a hill rising quietly above the surrounding land. Nature had reclaimed the monument so completely that even those who lived beside it for centuries believed it to be part of the earth itself. This transformation was gradual, unfolding across hundreds of years. Yet by the time the first Spanish explorers entered the region in the early 16th century, the illusion was complete. The vast structure that had once served as the spiritual center of a thriving civilization now appeared to be nothing more than a green hill overlooking the city. The architecture had vanished beneath soil and vegetation. Only the massive bulk of the structure remained, silent and unrecognized. Ironically, the very materials that allowed ancient builders to create the largest pyramid on Earth also helped hide it from history. Adobe and earth made the structure flexible and durable enough to survive earthquakes and centuries of environmental change. At the same time, those same materials allowed it to merge slowly with the landscape. The monument did not collapse. It disappeared. What had once been a carefully engineered pyramid became something else entirely, a mountain shaped by human hands but disguised by time. For centuries, people walked across its slopes, unaware that beneath their feet lay layers of ancient construction built by generations who had devoted their labor to raising a sacred mountain toward the sky. By the early 16th century, the world that had once built and expanded the great monument at the center of Cholula had already begun to fade into history. The temples that once echoed with ritual chants had grown quiet. The great ceremonial gatherings that had filled the plazas below the pyramid no longer took place with the same intensity. Time, conflict, and shifting political power had gradually altered the landscape of central Mexico. The enormous structure that had taken centuries to build still stood at the heart of the city, but it no longer looked like the monument its creators had once intended. The carefully shaped terraces had softened. The plaster coatings that once protected its surfaces had eroded under centuries of wind and rain. Without constant maintenance, the edges of the pyramid slowly lost their sharp geometry. Nature began its slow and patient work. Grasses took root in small patches of soil along the slopes. Shrubs spread across the terraces where rainwater collected. Over generations, deeper roots pushed into the adobe layers beneath the surface. Small plants gave way to larger vegetation, and eventually trees began to grow along the sides of the structure. The transformation was gradual, unfolding across centuries so quietly that those who lived nearby may not have noticed how dramatic it had become. What had once been a monumental pyramid rising above the city slowly began to resemble a natural feature of the landscape. The slopes rounded into gentle curves, the terraces blended together, the architecture disappeared beneath a blanket of earth and vegetation. By the time Spanish explorers and conquistadors entered the region in the early 1500s, the illusion was complete. The massive structure that had once dominated the religious life of Mesoamerica no longer resembled a pyramid at all. It looked like a hill. The explorers arriving from Europe were already overwhelmed by the scale and complexity of the cities they encountered across central Mexico. Markets larger than any in Europe filled with merchants selling goods from distant regions. Temples rose above plazas where ceremonies had been performed for generations. The cultural landscape they encountered was vast and unfamiliar. Amid this environment stood the large green hill rising above the town. To the Spanish eye, there was nothing unusual about it. Natural hills were common throughout the valley. The vegetation covering its slopes gave no obvious sign that the ground beneath it had once been carefully shaped by human hands. The monument's immense scale worked in its favor. Because the pyramid was so wide and so heavily eroded, its overall form blended seamlessly into the surrounding terrain. The geometric lines that once defined its terraces had softened beyond recognition. What remained was simply a gentle rise overlooking the town. Yet even though the true nature of the hill had been forgotten, the location still carried spiritual meaning for the people who lived there. Sacred places often retain their importance long after their original purpose fades from memory. In Cholula, the summit of the hill continued to hold religious significance. When Spanish colonists began establishing their presence in the region, they followed a pattern common throughout the Americas. Indigenous temples and sacred sites were often replaced with Christian churches. This act served both symbolic and practical purposes. By building their places of worship atop existing spiritual centers, the colonists asserted the authority of their own religion, while also taking advantage of locations that local communities already regarded as sacred. And so, in the late 16th century, construction began on a church at the top of the hill. The structure that rose there became known as the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de los Remedios. From the outside, it appears like many colonial churches found throughout Mexico. Its bright walls and domed roof stand against the sky, visible from nearly every part of the city below. A path winds up the hillside toward its entrance, where visitors gather to admire the sweeping view across the valley. Few of those early builders could have imagined what lay beneath their foundations. Directly under the church was the summit of the ancient pyramid that had once served as the spiritual heart of the region. Beneath that summit lay centuries of construction, layers of temples, staircases, and ceremonial platforms built by generations of builders who had devoted their labor to shaping a sacred mountain. The Christian sanctuary stood above a monument that had taken nearly 1,000 years to build. The irony is striking. A place once dedicated to ancient deities, now crowned by a church devoted to an entirely different faith. For centuries, the church remained the most visible landmark in Cholula. Pilgrims climbed the hill to attend Mass. Festivals filled the grounds around the sanctuary. The town grew and changed around it as generations passed. Meanwhile, the vast structure hidden beneath the hill remained almost entirely unknown. People walked across its slopes every day without realizing they were standing on one of the largest ancient monuments ever created. Farmers worked fields nearby. Children played along the hillside paths. Travelers paused at the summit to watch the sunset over distant volcanoes. All the while, beneath the earth and roots of trees, the buried pyramid waited. Its interior chambers remained sealed. Its earlier layers remained hidden. The ancient walls that once formed terraces and temples were still there, preserved inside the enormous mass of adobe and earth. For nearly 400 years, the truth about the hill remained buried beneath soil and vegetation. Scholars studying ancient Mesoamerica focused their attention on other ruins whose architecture was clearly visible above ground. The hill at Cholula seemed unremarkable by comparison. Yet some observers began to notice subtle details that suggested something unusual might lie beneath its surface. The slope of the hill appeared strangely regular. Certain exposed areas revealed fragments of brick and plaster that did not belong to natural geology. The symmetry of its shape hinted at a design that might once have been deliberate. These clues were faint, easily overlooked, but they were enough to raise questions. In the early 20th century, archaeologists decided to investigate those questions more closely. Rather than excavate the entire hill from above, an action that would have destroyed the church, they adopted a different strategy. They began digging tunnels into the sides of the hill, cutting narrow passages through the interior in the hope of discovering whether the mound concealed ancient structures. At first, the tunnels passed only through packed soil. Then the diggers encountered something unexpected, a wall. Behind that wall lay another layer of construction, and behind that, another. What the archaeologists had begun to uncover would eventually reveal one of the most astonishing architectural secrets in the ancient world. What are your thoughts about this? Share with us in the comments section. By the early 20th century, the hill rising above the city of Cholula had stood quietly for generations, its grassy slopes crowned by the colonial church that overlooked the valley. To most people, it remained simply a natural landmark, a pleasant rise in the landscape that offered sweeping views of distant volcanoes and the town below. Yet to a small group of archaeologists studying the region, the hill began to provoke an unusual question. Its shape seemed too regular. Its slopes rose with a symmetry that hinted at something deliberate beneath the soil. In certain places where erosion had exposed the ground, fragments of ancient brick and plaster could be seen mixed into the earth. These clues were subtle, easily dismissed as scattered debris from nearby ruins. But to careful observers, they suggested something far more intriguing. What if the hill itself was not natural? In 1931, archaeologists decided to investigate this possibility in a way that would avoid damaging the church standing at the summit. Rather than excavating from above, they chose to enter the hill from the side. Workers began cutting narrow tunnels into the slope, slowly removing soil and debris as they advanced deeper into the mound. At first, the diggers encountered nothing remarkable. The tunnels passed through layers of compacted earth, much like what one would expect inside an ordinary hill. But as the excavation continued, the workers suddenly struck something unexpected. A flat surface appeared in the dim light of their lanterns. It was not stone formed by natural processes. It was a wall. The wall was made of adobe bricks arranged with deliberate care. The bricks were bound together with ancient mortar, forming a surface that had clearly been shaped by human hands. The discovery electrified the team. The hill was not simply a mound of soil. Beneath its surface lay the remains of ancient construction. Encouraged by this discovery, the archaeologists continued tunneling. As the passages extended deeper into the hill, more evidence of buried architecture began to appear. The workers uncovered staircases that once led upward toward long-vanished terraces. They discovered sections of plastered surfaces that had once formed the outer walls of structures. Some passages revealed corridors where the floor remained surprisingly level, suggesting that they were once part of carefully planned ceremonial spaces. With each meter of excavation, the mystery grew larger. The hill contained not just fragments of ruins, but entire layers of architecture hidden within its core. What had once appeared to be a natural mound was slowly revealing itself as something far more complex. Over the following years, the network of tunnels expanded dramatically. Archaeologists and laborers carved passageways through the interior of the structure, mapping the layers of construction buried inside. Eventually, the underground system stretched for more than 8 kilometers, creating one of the most extensive archaeological tunnel networks ever constructed inside a single monument. Moving through these passages was like traveling through time. Each section of tunnel revealed different architectural features belonging to different periods in the history of the site. Walls built with one style of brickwork gave way to others, constructed using slightly different techniques. Plastered surfaces changed in texture and composition. Staircases appeared suddenly in the darkness, their steps leading upward toward parts of the pyramid that had long ago been sealed beneath later construction. The deeper the archaeologists explored, the more astonishing the discoveries became. In several areas, they encountered walls decorated with ancient murals preserved beneath layers of earth. The colors had faded with time, but many details remained visible, offering glimpses into the rituals and artistic traditions of the people who had once lived and worshipped there. One of the most remarkable discoveries was a long mural showing dozens of human figures gathered together in what appears to be a ceremonial celebration. The figures hold drinking vessels, and their expressions and gestures suggest a lively communal event. Archaeologists came to refer to this artwork as the Drinker's Mural, a scene believed to depict ritual consumption of pulque, a fermented beverage made from the agave plant that played an important role in religious ceremonies throughout ancient Mesoamerica. Elsewhere in the tunnels, smaller murals revealed intricate designs featuring insects, geometric patterns, and symbolic imagery associated with fertility, agriculture, and the natural world. These paintings had once adorned the outer surfaces of earlier pyramids before being buried by later expansions. Hidden from sunlight for centuries, they survived as delicate windows into a culture that had long since disappeared. The tunnels also exposed altars and ceremonial platforms that had once been the focus of religious activity. In some places, archaeologists discovered stairways that had once carried priests and worshippers upward toward temples at the summit of earlier pyramids. These staircases now ended abruptly within the tunnels, sealed by the massive layers of construction added by later generations. Each discovery confirmed an astonishing truth. The hill was not simply a single pyramid hidden beneath soil and vegetation. It was a complex architectural structure composed of multiple pyramids built one atop another across centuries. The tunnels revealed walls belonging to earlier construction phases buried deep within the monument. In some areas, archaeologists could trace the outlines of entire terraces belonging to pyramids that had once stood in the open air before being entombed inside larger structures. It was as though several ancient monuments had been stacked together to create a single enormous mass. This realization transformed the understanding of the site. The monument beneath the hill was no longer seen as one pyramid built at a single moment in history. Instead, it was recognized as a layered record of human activity spanning generations. Each civilization that controlled the city had added its own architectural contribution, expanding the sacred structure outward and upward while preserving earlier phases inside. As archaeologists continued mapping the tunnels, they began to understand the true scale of what they had uncovered. The interior passages wound through vast layers of construction that represented hundreds of years of building activity. Every new wall or staircase revealed another stage in the pyramid's long evolution. Yet the deeper they dug, the more complex the structure appeared. Some layers did not align perfectly with those above or below them. Staircases belonging to one construction phase sometimes led toward spaces that no longer existed, blocked by later expansions. Walls appeared at unexpected angles, hinting at architectural designs that had been altered or abandoned as the monument grew. The pyramid was not simply enlarged over time, it had been reinvented repeatedly by different generations of builders. Each phase reshaped the monument in ways that sometimes obscured the intentions of earlier architects. Standing inside the tunnels, surrounded by buried stairways and painted walls that had not seen daylight for centuries, archaeologists realized they were exploring something unlike any other pyramid in the world. This was not just a hidden monument. It was an entire architectural history sealed inside a mountain of earth and brick. And as the excavations continued, the evidence pointed toward an even deeper mystery. Buried within the vast structure was an older pyramid that had started it all, a much smaller monument whose existence had been almost completely forgotten beneath the weight of everything that came after. Do you have any questions or theories? Do share with us in the comments section. Beneath the massive slopes of the Great Pyramid of Cholula lies a secret almost unimaginable. A pyramid hidden within a pyramid, the earliest structure buried so completely that for centuries it remained unknown even to those living beside it. Archaeologists refer to this first phase as La Conejera, a modest platform by comparison to the enormous monument it would eventually anchor. It measured scarcely 10 meters across, a small ceremonial mound constructed with careful precision from adobe bricks and compacted earth. Yet it carried the seeds of something far greater. La Conejera was not built to dominate the horizon, nor was it meant to overwhelm the eye. Its purpose was symbolic and spiritual, a space for ritual activity, offerings, and the veneration of deities long revered in the region. Even at this small scale, the pyramid reflected a sophisticated understanding of construction. Its walls were laid with uniform adobe bricks, compacted tightly to form a stable core, and coated with plaster to protect against the elements. Though tiny compared to what would follow, it was the foundation upon which a civilization would leave its most enduring mark. Over the centuries, successive generations returned to this site, drawn by its sacred significance. Rather than abandoning La Conejera or building elsewhere, they chose to expand. The first enlargement involved extending the base outward, covering the original structure with new layers of earth and brick. This expansion preserved the older mound within, sealing it inside the growing mass. In this way, each new construction became both a continuation and a transformation of the past. The pyramid was no longer a single static monument. It had become a living structure, evolving with the city and its people. As decades passed, the pyramid underwent multiple phases of expansion. Archaeological studies suggest at least 6 major stages of construction, each corresponding to a different era and a different group of builders. Each new layer increased the footprint, raised the terraces, and added new ceremonial platforms. Staircases were extended or rerouted, temple spaces were rebuilt, and walls were coated with fresh plaster. Over time, what began as a 10-meter mound transformed into a vast ceremonial mountain more than 300 meters wide. Each expansion preserved the previous structure, creating a remarkable phenomenon: a pyramid inside a pyramid inside a pyramid. The layers of adobe, earth, and rubble entombed earlier constructions, acting as both protection and archive. Inside these layers, archaeologists have found plastered walls, hidden stairways, and even remnants of ceremonial spaces that had been completely buried and forgotten. In some places, the original adobe bricks from La Conejera are visible, surrounded by newer constructions that form terraces and walls many times their size. This repeated process of rebuilding raises profound questions. Why did the people of Cholula continue to enlarge the same pyramid rather than constructing new monuments elsewhere? The answer may lie in the cultural and spiritual significance of the site. For the inhabitants, this location was sacred, a place where the earth itself was believed to connect to the divine. By building upon the existing pyramid, each generation honored their ancestors and maintained continuity with the past, while simultaneously asserting their own authority and religious devotion. The act of enlargement was both preservation and transformation, a way to connect generations, to inscribe history into the very architecture of the city. The architectural fingerprints left by successive builders are evident throughout the structure. Changes in brick size, construction techniques, and decorative plaster reflect the evolving skills, resources, and aesthetics of each culture. Some layers display meticulous planning, with terraces aligned to the cardinal directions or oriented towards celestial events. Others show more pragmatic expansions, with massed earth and brick filling the space around earlier walls. Together, these layers form a complex palimpsest of human ingenuity and devotion, preserving a history of labor, belief, and artistic expression spanning centuries. One of the most fascinating aspects of this pyramid within a pyramid phenomenon is how it encapsulates time itself. The original La Conejera was a small and functional ritual platform. Centuries later, as the structure grew outward and upward, the earliest construction remained intact, encased beneath layers of earth and brick. The deeper one penetrates into the pyramid, the further back in time one travels. Each tunnel, each excavation, reveals not only the technical achievements of the builders, but also their worldview, how they understood the sacred, how they expressed continuity with the past, and how they sought to shape a monument that would endure long after their own lives had ended. This method of layered construction is rare among the world's great pyramids. In Egypt, for example, the pyramids were generally built in a single monumental phase, designed to achieve a fixed form from the outset. Cholula, by contrast, reflects a different philosophy. The monument was conceived as something expandable, adaptable, and alive. It grew alongside the city, responding to the ambitions of rulers, the demands of religious practices, and the passage of time itself. By encasing each prior structure, the builders created a layered history that survives to this day, waiting for those willing to explore its depths. The scale of this cumulative construction is staggering. By the time the outermost terraces were complete, the pyramid had become the largest in the world by volume. But it owes its existence to that first modest mound buried deep within, La Conejera, which served as the nucleus around which centuries of architecture coalesced. Without this foundational structure, the later pyramid could not have existed. Without the vision to expand upon it rather than replace it, the vast complex that defines Cholula today would never have taken shape. The very act of building in layers suggests a worldview profoundly different from our own. Each generation of builders recognized the importance of continuity, of anchoring themselves in the sacred past while contributing to the monument of the present. The pyramid became a tangible record of human devotion, an enduring testament to the city's identity and spiritual life. In this way, the architecture itself became a kind of memory, preserving cultural knowledge, religious practice, and artistic achievement for centuries, even when later observers would forget its existence entirely. La Conejera reminds us that great monuments do not always appear fully formed. They can begin as small, purposeful gestures that accumulate meaning and scale over time. Through patient labor and visionary design, humans can transform modest constructions into architectural wonders that surpass imagination. Beneath the green hill of Cholula, the original pyramid survives, concealed yet indestructible, its presence embedded within every brick, every layer of earth, and every terrace that stretches across the valley. It is a monument to human persistence, to devotion across generations, and to the enduring power of a single idea that a sacred space, once consecrated, can grow and evolve into something truly extraordinary. The architecture of the Great Pyramid of Cholula reveals not only the ingenuity of its builders, but also the profound sophistication of Mesoamerican design principles. Walk through its tunnels, study its terraces, and examine its hidden walls, and one begins to recognize a recurring motif that extends far beyond this single city, a style that echoes across the ancient civilizations of central Mexico and beyond. This is the Tlachihualtepetl, a system of construction that blends engineering, aesthetics, and symbolism into a unified architectural language. Tlachihualtepetl is deceptively simple in its visual appearance. The walls of the pyramid rise in alternating layers, a sloping section called the talud, followed by a vertical panel known as the tablero. These elements repeat rhythmically across the terraces, producing a geometric harmony that is both functional and ceremonial. The sloped talud provides structural stability, distributing weight outward so that the walls can support massive terraces above. The vertical tablero, in turn, creates a planar surface often used to display painted imagery, carvings, or symbolic designs. Together, the two components form a visual cadence that communicates order, strength, and ritual significance. This architectural system is not unique to Cholula. It is famously associated with the city of Teotihuacan, where the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon exhibit the same alternating layers of slope and panel. At Teotihuacan, the Tlachihualtepetl conveys both grandeur and cosmological meaning, linking the built environment to celestial patterns, processional routes, and the religious ideology of the city. Its presence in Cholula suggests that this smaller city was not isolated. It was part of a vast network of trade, communication, and cultural exchange that spanned central Mexico. Ideas, techniques, and religious concepts flowed along roads and river valleys, connecting cities that might otherwise seem distant and separate. Archaeologists believe that the Tlachihualtepetl style at Cholula may have been introduced during one of the later phases of construction, when the city was integrated into these larger Mesoamerican systems. Its terraces and panels exhibit proportions, angles, and decorative elements consistent with those found in Teotihuacan, while local materials and construction methods, such as adobe brick cores and packed earth, adapted the style to regional conditions. In this way, the pyramid demonstrates both innovation and continuity. Builders were not merely copying distant models, but transforming them to fit their own religious, political, and environmental context. The use of Tlachihualtepetl also suggests that Cholula occupied an important position within a continental network of sacred cities. Its pyramid, massive even by comparison with other ceremonial platforms, would have signaled to visitors and traders alike the city's significance. Pilgrims traveling along the roads connecting central Mexican settlements would recognize the familiar architectural cues, understanding that they had arrived at a place of ritual importance. The terraces and panels served as both practical platforms for ceremonies and symbolic markers that communicated alignment with a broader spiritual universe. Trade and cultural exchange were critical. To this network, archaeological evidence indicates that Cholula maintained connections with cities across Mesoamerica, importing obsidian, pottery, and exotic goods while exporting its own crafts and agricultural products. Ideas traveled alongside material goods. Religious practices, iconography, and architectural styles moved along the same routes, forming a web of cultural continuity across the region. By adopting Tlachihualtepetl, Cholula linked itself visually and conceptually to the centers of power and religion that defined Mesoamerican civilization. Yet despite these connections, Cholula's pyramid remained unmatched. Even the grand monuments of Teotihuacan, impressive in scale and visibility, are dwarfed in terms of volume by the man-made mountain rising in the valley of Cholula. While Teotihuacan pyramids soar dramatically into the sky, Cholula spreads outward across hundreds of meters, enclosing within its bulk centuries of construction and multiple ceremonial stages. Its terraces may not reach the same heights, but the total mass, the sheer immensity of adobe and earth, makes it the largest pyramid on the continent and in the world. The use of talud tablero in Cholula demonstrates that the builders were not only concerned with volume, but with visual and symbolic coherence. Each terrace follows precise angles. Each panel serves as a canvas for ceremonial meaning. Even hidden walls deep within the pyramid reflect the same principles, suggesting that these early architects understood the importance of consistency across time and construction phases. As each generation added a new layer, the talud tablero style provided a framework that allowed the structure to grow while maintaining unity. The style also reinforced the religious significance of the pyramid. By alternating sloped and vertical elements, the terraces created spaces suitable for rituals, processions, and offerings. Pilgrims ascending the pyramid would pass from one level to another, each stage of the climb marked by distinct architectural cues. The rhythm of slope and panel-guided movement, focusing attention on the ceremonial spaces and culminating at the summit, where priests performed rites dedicated to Quetzalcoatl. Architecture became a choreographed experience, shaping perception and behavior as much as it shaped the physical landscape. In this way, Cholula's pyramid is more than a monument of size. It is a testament to the ingenuity of its builders, capable of synthesizing local materials, ancestral knowledge, and continental architectural traditions into a single enduring structure. Its terraces, walls, and panels speak to a civilization attuned to both function and symbolism, capable of connecting the earthly and the divine in ways that continue to awe scholars today. By studying the talud tablero at Cholula, archaeologists gain insight into the broader network of Mesoamerican civilization. The pyramid embodies connections between cities, continuity of religious thought, and the evolution of architectural practice across centuries. Its designers were not merely constructing a local temple, they were participating in a tradition that spanned valleys, rivers, and mountains, embedding Cholula into a continent-wide cultural landscape. And yet, despite its connections and symbolic power, no other pyramid in the region rivals Cholula in total scale. The fusion of local materials, layered construction, and talud tablero design produced a monument that is both uniquely regional and astonishingly vast. In its form, one can see the balance between tradition and innovation, the dialogue between past and present, and the ambition of a civilization that sought not only to honor its deities, but to leave a record of human achievement that could endure across the centuries. To understand the sheer audacity of the Great Pyramid of Cholula, one must appreciate the monumental engineering challenge it posed. Unlike the stone pyramids of Egypt, where immense blocks were quarried, cut, and carefully placed, Cholula relied primarily on adobe bricks, earth, gravel, and volcanic debris. These materials are far less rigid than limestone, far more vulnerable to weathering, and far less forgiving under the weight of a massive structure. Yet the builders of Cholula succeeded in raising a monument that would endure for more than a millennium, not by resisting nature, but by understanding and working with it. The first step in this extraordinary process was the foundation. Builders recognized that any structure of such scale required a stable base capable of supporting millions of tons of mass without succumbing to uneven settling or collapse. They excavated and leveled the site carefully, creating broad terraces to distribute weight across a large area. Into these terraces they layered compacted earth interspersed with gravel, ceramic shards, and fragments of volcanic rock, forming a reinforced substructure. This mixture created a dense, heterogeneous base that could absorb pressure and reduce the risk of catastrophic failure. The materials were arranged so that they acted together, each layer complementing the others, forming a foundation as much geological as architectural. Once the foundation was complete, the builders began layering the pyramid itself. Rather than constructing a hollow shell, they filled the interior with massive amounts of earth, clay, and rubble. Adobe bricks were used to form retaining walls and terraces, creating a structural frame that could contain and organize the fill materials. Within this framework, the dense interior layers distributed weight evenly, preventing stress from concentrating in one area and avoiding the kind of cracks and collapses that plague many earthen constructions. The layers inside Cholula were not haphazard. Archaeologists have discovered carefully constructed partitions, compacted fills, and channels designed to stabilize the earth. These elements allowed the pyramid to resist not only its own weight, but also external forces such as seasonal rainfall and seismic activity. By managing the movement of water and the shifting of soils, the builders effectively created a structure capable of surviving the natural hazards of central Mexico, including earthquakes and erosion. One of the most remarkable features of the pyramid is how it behaves under stress. Unlike rigid stone pyramids, which can crack and fracture when faced with movement or settling, Cholula functions almost like a compressed mass of geological material. The adobe walls, earth fills, and compacted layers absorb and redistribute pressure. Minor shifts do not compromise the overall integrity. The structure adjusts subtly to accommodate changes in load or tension. In essence, the pyramid was designed to behave like a mountain rather than a conventional building. Its creators understood that permanence required flexibility, that the monument would endure not through rigidity, but through resilience. This engineering philosophy is reflected in the pyramid's terraces and slopes. Each terrace not only served ceremonial purposes, but also contributed to structural stability. The sloped sides, combined with internal reinforcement, helped prevent landslides and erosion, channeling rainwater in ways that minimized damage. Even the outermost surfaces, covered in plaster and later softened by vegetation, were part of an integrated system designed to preserve the monument over centuries. Every aspect of the pyramid, from the core to the summit, demonstrates a meticulous understanding of materials, forces, and long-term durability. The repetition of construction phases over centuries added another layer of engineering sophistication. Each successive generation did not demolish the previous structure. Instead, they built upon it, encasing older layers within new terraces and fill. This approach served a dual purpose. It expanded the pyramid to accommodate religious and civic needs, and it enhanced structural stability. Older layers, compacted and weathered, became part of the pyramid's core, providing an additional buffer that absorbed weight and pressure from the newer constructions. By layering over time, the builders effectively created a composite monument that integrated multiple phases into a single resilient mass. Water management was another critical aspect of Cholula's engineering. Unlike desert environments where stone pyramids can remain dry, central Mexico experiences seasonal rains that could threaten the integrity of earthen structures. Builders incorporated drainage solutions, channels and terraces to guide water away from vulnerable areas, preventing saturation and weakening of adobe cores. The repeated layers of construction also contributed to drainage, as earth and rubble allowed water to percolate gradually rather than pooling and causing structural failure. Cholula's construction also demonstrates an understanding of scale and human labor. Moving millions of tons of earth without wheeled vehicles or draft animals required careful organization, precise coordination, and the mobilization of a large workforce. Laborers would have carried soil in baskets, shaped and dried adobe bricks, and meticulously layered materials to form terraces and walls. Supervisors and planners ensured that each layer followed the intended dimensions, angles, and structural design. This coordination reflects not only engineering skill, but also sophisticated social organization and logistical planning. What emerges from these methods is a monument that blurs the line between architecture and landscape. Over time, the pyramid gradually merged with the surrounding hills, its terraces softened by rain and vegetation, its form concealed beneath a grassy slope. Yet this apparent disappearance is itself a testament to the ingenuity of its builders. The pyramid survives precisely because it was designed to integrate with nature, to endure in a dynamic environment without collapsing. It is a structure that becomes part of the land, an artificial mountain indistinguishable from the natural contours of the valley. This philosophy of construction contrasts sharply with stone pyramids, which rely on rigidity and precision to achieve longevity. Stone structures are magnificent in their durability, but they are vulnerable to earthquakes, settling, and erosion. Cholula's pyramid, by contrast, achieves permanence through adaptability. Its mass, material composition, and layered design allow it to persist where other monuments might crumble. It is architecture that embraces time, responding to natural forces rather than opposing them. In examining Cholula, modern engineers and architects can learn from a civilization that approached construction with insight, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of materials. The pyramid embodies lessons in resilience, in the integration of human labor with natural forces, and in the creation of monuments designed not merely to impress, but to endure. Its scale, complexity, and adaptability remain astonishing even to contemporary eyes. What do you think about this? Share with us in the comments section. The world's great pyramids are often compared because of their monumental scale, but when we look closely at the structures of Egypt and Mesoamerica, we see that they were built according to profoundly different philosophies. The Great Pyramid of Giza rises sharply from the sands of the Nile, a precise geometric form executed in massive limestone blocks, each cut and placed with painstaking care. Its height dominates the desert horizon, and its alignment with the cardinal directions reflects not only technical skill, but a worldview rooted in the cosmos, in the journey of a king's soul toward the heavens. The pyramid was a tomb, a container for a single life, an eternal monument to royal authority and divine order. In contrast, the Great Pyramid of Cholula was conceived along a completely different set of principles. Here, the monument spreads outward, rising gently in terraces across hundreds of meters. Its mass, rather than its height, dominates the landscape. Constructed with adobe bricks, compacted earth, and layers of rubble, the pyramid emphasizes volume and expansion rather than precision in cutting stone. Each successive generation added layers, expanding the structure like concentric rings, preserving earlier phases within its core. It is not a tomb, but a temple, a sacred mountain devoted to the gods, a center for communal worship, and a tangible expression of ongoing religious life. The contrast between these approaches reflects differences not only in engineering, but in worldview. Egyptian architecture was concerned with permanence, with the exact preservation of form over time. Every stone at Giza is carefully measured, placed in alignment, and fitted to maintain structural integrity while projecting an idealized vision of order. Height was paramount because it symbolized the ascent of the pharaoh to the divine, a vertical trajectory from the earthly plane to the heavens. The focus was on singularity and perfection. The Pyramid of Giza is one monumental expression of a single ruler's power, built to endure the eternity of a king's afterlife. Cholula, by contrast, embodies continuity, adaptability, and accumulation. The original pyramid, La Conejera, began as a modest platform. Over centuries, successive cultures expanded it outward, layering adobe, earth, and rubble to create the enormous mass that exists today. The builders did not strive for vertical dominance, but for a monumental footprint that could encompass the spiritual and civic life of the city. Each layer preserved the one beneath, creating a complex monument that carries within it the architectural record of multiple civilizations. The pyramid grew as a living structure, evolving with the society that built it, rather than being frozen in the perfection of a single moment. Social organization was critical to both projects, but the mechanisms were different. The construction of Giza required a massive coordinated workforce capable of quarrying, transporting, and placing millions of limestone blocks with exacting precision. Logistics, measurement, and supervision were essential. Errors could be catastrophic. Cholula demanded a different kind of coordination. Thousands of laborers produced adobe, bricks, moved earth and rubble, and layered materials carefully to ensure stability. The work could be carried out by many small teams, each responsible for sections of the expanding terraces. Success depended on understanding materials and forces, on long-term planning, and on the ability to integrate new construction into an existing structure without compromising its integrity. The materials themselves highlight the philosophical divergence. At Giza, the rigidity of stone required careful engineering, but allowed for soaring height and an enduring, almost immutable structure. Cholula's adobe and earth were flexible and forgiving, able to absorb seismic activity and settle over time. This flexibility enabled the pyramid to grow in volume while remaining stable, but it also meant the monument would slowly merge with the landscape over centuries, blending human achievement with nature in a way Egyptian pyramids never did. Purpose further separates the two civilizations' approaches. The pyramid at Giza was a vessel for the afterlife, an individualized project intended to secure the eternal status of a single ruler. Its design is inward-looking, focused on the tomb chamber at its core and the alignment of corridors to facilitate a cosmic journey. Cholula's pyramid, however, was outward-facing. It functioned as a ceremonial center for the entire city, a platform for rituals, offerings, and public gatherings. The monument communicated the city's religious and cultural identity, not just to the residents but to travelers and pilgrims across the region. Each expansion reinforced communal participation, collective memory, and spiritual continuity. Even in their visual impact, the philosophies diverge. Giza is a sharp, vertical monument, dramatic in its silhouette, visible for miles across the flat desert. It imposes itself on the landscape, declaring human ambition and control. Cholula, with its wide terraces and gentle slopes, integrates into the valley, almost hiding in plain sight. From a distance, it resembles a natural hill, its human design obscured by centuries of vegetation. Its monumental scale is revealed only to those who study its interior or ascend its terraces, creating a layered experience of discovery rather than immediate awe. Both pyramids demonstrate that human societies, regardless of time or geography, can accomplish feats of extraordinary scale, organization, and technical skill. But the contrasts between Giza and Cholula remind us that engineering is never neutral. It is inseparable from worldview, culture, and purpose. Height versus volume, precision versus adaptability, tomb versus temple. Each choice reflects deep beliefs about life, death, the cosmos, and the relationship between humans and the divine. The comparison also emphasizes the diversity of human ingenuity. While Egyptian builders mastered the challenges of massive stone construction and vertical alignment, Mesoamerican engineers mastered the subtle complexities of earth, adobe, and expansion over time. Both achievements are astonishing, yet they speak to entirely different approaches to solving the problem of permanence, stability, and symbolic expression. One emphasizes control over materials and geometry, the other emphasizes resilience, continuity, and integration with the environment. By studying these pyramids side by side, we gain insight into the vast spectrum of human imagination and engineering. Giza and Cholula are not competitors, but complements. Two different answers to the same fundamental questions. How do we create monuments that endure, that communicate meaning, that embody cultural values? One reaches for the sky, the other spreads across the land. One preserves a singular moment in eternity, the other preserves centuries of layered history. Together, they reveal the diversity, ambition, and philosophical depth of ancient civilizations at the height of their powers. Within the labyrinthine tunnels of the Great Pyramid of Cholula, Archaeologists encountered a discovery that transformed the way we understand this monument. Buried beneath centuries of earth and adobe, they found walls and panels covered with murals that had survived nearly 2,000 years. Despite the passage of time, exposure to moisture, and the pressure of countless layers of construction above, many of these paintings retained vivid imagery and delicate detail. They were not mere decoration. They were windows into the spiritual, cultural, and communal life of the city that built the pyramid, offering a glimpse of a world long vanished but not entirely forgotten. The murals reveal a society deeply engaged in ritual activity, one in which ceremonies were integrated into the very architecture of the pyramid. One of the most striking murals now, referred to as the drinker's scene, depicts dozens of figures gathered together in communal ritual. They hold vessels likely filled with pulque, a fermented beverage made from the sap of the agave plant, a substance central to Mesoamerican religious practice. The participants are arranged in dynamic poses, gesturing and raising their cups in unison. Their expressions convey intensity, devotion, and celebration, capturing the energy of ritual that took place within these now hidden chambers. The murals do not merely depict individuals, they illustrate movement, rhythm, and a social choreography, suggesting that the rituals themselves were carefully organized and meaningful. Scholars infer that these ceremonies were more than festive gatherings. They were acts of devotion, reinforcing spiritual connection, social cohesion, and perhaps even political authority. The walls of the pyramid were transformed into a stage for human activity, turning the monument into a living environment in which architecture, art, and ritual were inseparable. Other murals carry a different set of symbols, emphasizing nature, fertility, and cosmology. Grasshoppers and other insects appear repeatedly, rendered with surprising attention to detail. Geometric motifs and abstract symbols suggest ideas connected to agricultural cycles, seasonal transitions, and the spiritual relationship between humans and the land. These images were not merely ornamental, they served as symbolic guides, encoding the beliefs, fears, and hopes of a civilization that depended on ritual to structure both daily life and the larger cosmic order. The combination of ritual and visual representation indicates that the pyramid was far more than a passive monument. It was an active center of communal life, a ceremonial hub where priests, leaders, and citizens converged to enact complex traditions. The terraces, stairways, and hidden chambers were stages upon which processions moved, altars were presented, and offerings were deposited. The architecture itself was inseparable from the rituals. Ascending the pyramid became a physical expression of spiritual ascent, with each layer of adobe and earth shaping movement, perception, and experience. This ritual life was sustained over centuries. Each generation added layers of construction not only to enlarge the pyramid, but to provide new spaces for worship and ceremony. Archaeologists have found evidence that these spaces were continually maintained and renewed, even as the city's political landscape shifted. Religious continuity appears to have been a central principle of Cholula's society. The pyramid was a living monument, evolving with the people who used it, absorbing centuries of devotion and activity into its very core. Yet despite the vitality captured in the murals, the narrative of the pyramid is also one of decline. Archaeological evidence indicates that at some point the regularity of ceremonies began to wane. The reasons are complex: changing political powers, external conquest, shifts in population, and broader environmental factors may have contributed. As the city's fortunes declined, the rituals that had animated the pyramid gradually ceased. The murals, once vibrant backdrops for daily devotion, became silent witnesses to a civilization in retreat. Abandonment did not erase the past entirely. The structures remained, layered and encased, protecting the artwork within. Over time, vegetation began to grow over the terraces, eroding edges, softening slopes, and obscuring the human hand that had so carefully shaped the landscape. By the time Spanish colonists arrived, the active life of the pyramid had ended, Pilgrims no longer ascended its terraces. Priests no longer conducted ceremonies in its hidden chambers. The artwork remained, but the purpose that had brought it into being had faded. The murals of Cholula, preserved in darkness, offer modern viewers a glimpse into the vitality that once filled this monument. They remind us that the pyramid was not simply a mass of earth and adobe, but a stage for human experience. It was an environment designed to facilitate and enhance ritual life, to shape movement, to encode meaning, and to transmit cultural values across generations. Every figure, every symbol, every gesture captured in the murals is a record of belief, practice, and collective memory. They also suggest the relationship between art and architecture in ancient Mesoamerica. Unlike the stone pyramids of Egypt, which focused on monumental form and external precision, Cholula integrated visual culture directly into the structural fabric. Walls were not merely functional, they were instruments of narrative, devotion, and memory, the very act of ascending the pyramid and moving through its hidden chambers was an interaction with both art and architecture, an immersive experience in which human and spiritual activity were inseparable. The abandonment of the pyramid, though tragic, adds to its poignancy. The rituals ceased, the priests disappeared, and the city's political and religious systems dissolved. Yet the murals remained, hidden beneath layers of construction, waiting for modern archaeologists to rediscover them. Their preservation is a testament to the foresight of the builders, who encased sacred spaces within subsequent layers, protecting them from exposure and decay. In doing so, they created a time capsule, a silent archive of human devotion, artistry, and belief that endures long after the society that produced it has vanished. By the 9th century, the pulse of Mesoamerica had begun to shift. Across the highlands and valleys, cities that had once thrived on trade, ritual, and political power faced profound transformations. Networks of commerce that had carried obsidian, pottery, cacao, and precious feathers across the continent fractured. Alliances between city-states dissolved, leaving once stable polities vulnerable to both internal strife and external pressure. Populations dispersed as resources dwindled, and urban centers that had flourished for centuries began to shrink. Cholula, the sacred city at the heart of the Puebla Valley, was not immune to these changes. Yet Cholula endured longer than many of its contemporaries. Even as rival cities faltered and crumbled, the religious and ceremonial center retained its significance. Pilgrims still traveled to its terraces. Priests continued rituals, offering prayers and sacrifices atop the expanding pyramid. The city's monumental architecture remained a testament to continuity, a bridge linking the living with the sacred past. Its pyramid, built layer upon layer over centuries, had grown into a vast artificial mountain, embodying the devotion, labor, and faith of generations. But even monuments are not eternal in the face of social and environmental change. Over time, the political and economic systems that had supported continuous construction began to falter. The labor required to maintain and expand the pyramid was immense, dependent on a complex society capable of mobilizing thousands of workers. As trade routes shifted and regional power fragmented, the resources and coordination necessary for these projects became scarce. The last layers of adobe and earth were added centuries earlier, and no new terraces were built to continue the centuries-long tradition of expansion. What had been a living, evolving monument became a static presence, a relic of a more ambitious age. As human activity decreased, nature began to reclaim the structure. Rain softened the terraces, washing away the crisp edges that had once defined the pyramid's steps and slopes. Seeds carried by wind and birds took root in the packed adobe, sprouting grasses, shrubs, and eventually small trees. Over decades and centuries, the pyramid slowly merged with the surrounding landscape. The hard lines of architecture gave way to the gentle contours of a hill. From a distance, the artificial mountain appeared entirely natural, its human origins obscured beneath layers of soil and vegetation. The abandonment of ritual activity compounded this process. Without regular ceremonies, offerings, or maintenance, the sacred spaces within the pyramid fell into disuse. Hidden chambers filled with debris. Staircases and terraces were covered by silt and plant growth. Murals, once vibrant and central to ceremonial life, faded under the weight of centuries and the slow encroachment of earth. The pyramid's social function dissolved even as its physical presence endured, transforming it from a locus of community and devotion into a quiet monument, silent and enigmatic. This decline also reflected broader cultural transformations. As political power shifted elsewhere, the religious significance of Cholula began to diminish relative to emerging centers. New leaders and city-states sought alternative sites for ritual and governance, and long-standing networks of trade and communication moved along new corridors. The city that had commanded attention for centuries gradually receded into regional memory, its monumental pyramid remaining as a testament to a past that no longer guided the present. Yet even in abandonment, the pyramid's scale and resilience endured. Its massive adobe and earth construction allowed it to survive centuries of neglect and natural forces that might have destroyed smaller or less well-engineered structures. Unlike more delicate masonry monuments which can crumble when support is withdrawn, Cholula's pyramid maintained its presence, slowly transforming into a silent green hill that masked the enormity of human achievement concealed within. The fall of Cholula was not marked by sudden destruction, but by gradual withdrawal. Human labor, ritual and devotion slowly ceased, leaving the pyramid as a passive observer of the valley. It no longer commanded the active attention of priests, pilgrims or rulers. Its terraces were empty, its chambers quiet, and the once vibrant murals faded into obscurity. Yet, paradoxically, the very processes that accompanied abandonment helped preserve the monument. Layers of earth and vegetation acted as protection, shielding the hidden structures, stairways and chambers from erosion, looting and exposure. In a strange way, neglect became a form of conservation. The surrounding city followed a similar trajectory. Homes and streets, once filled with bustling activity, fell into disrepair. Population centers contracted, and people migrated toward more secure or prosperous regions. Urban life fragmented, leaving only scattered communities around the abandoned core. The pyramid remained the most enduring element of Cholula, a silent witness to the cycles of growth, ritual, and human ambition that had defined its history. Over centuries, the memory of Cholula's greatness faded. For those who lived in the valley, the artificial mountain became indistinguishable from the natural hills surrounding it. By the time Spanish explorers arrived in the 16th century, few recognized that they were standing atop the largest pyramid ever built. The church constructed on its summit, Nuestra Señora de los Remedios, transformed the hill into a symbol of new religious authority, further masking the human ingenuity buried beneath centuries of soil and vegetation. Yet even in its fall, the pyramid retained its power to astonish. Hidden within the layers of earth were tunnels, chambers and murals, preserved fragments of the city's spiritual and architectural achievements. They waited quietly for rediscovery, offering modern observers a glimpse of the once thriving metropolis, its rituals and its extraordinary vision. The fall of Cholula did not erase its achievements. It simply transformed them into a monument concealed beneath the quiet green slopes of the Puebla Valley, a silent testament to human ambition and the impermanence of social structures in the face of time and nature. The story of Cholula's decline reminds us that even the greatest civilizations are vulnerable to the slow currents of change. Economic shifts, political upheavals, and social transformations can end practices that once seemed eternal. Yet, through careful engineering, monumental construction, and spiritual devotion, the legacy of a city can endure far beyond its years of active life. Cholula's pyramid, once alive with ritual, labor, and community, now rests in quiet obscurity, a reminder of the delicate interplay between human endeavor and the passage of time, and of the silent persistence of monumental ambition long after its builders have disappeared. Even after centuries of scholarly investigation, the Great Pyramid of Cholula remains one of the most enigmatic monuments on Earth. Archaeologists have uncovered tunnels, chambers, murals, and sections of terraced slopes, yet these excavated areas represent only a fraction of the pyramid's immense total volume. Much of the structure remains concealed beneath layers of earth, vegetation, and centuries of accumulated soil. Standing above it today, on the summit where the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de los Remedios perches, one could scarcely imagine the vast complex lying beneath, its hidden mass greater than that of the pyramids of Egypt combined. The process of rediscovery began in earnest in the early 20th century, when a combination of local curiosity and scientific inquiry prompted systematic tunneling. Archaeologists suspected that the hill might not be natural, but their initial explorations revealed little beyond soil and scattered adobe fragments. Gradually, careful excavation uncovered a network of tunnels extending for more than 8 kilometers, weaving through layers of construction that had accumulated over centuries. These passages revealed interior terraces, stairways, ceremonial chambers, and hidden altars that had lain untouched for millennia. Each tunnel opened a window into the lives of people who had long vanished, their devotion encoded in walls of adobe and earth. Even today, every excavation yields surprises. Archaeologists have identified 6 superimposed pyramids within the structure, each representing a different era and cultural influence. The earliest, La Conejera, was a modest platform, roughly 10 meters across, built during the pre-classic period. Subsequent builders expanded upon it repeatedly, creating a layered structure that eventually reached a base width of more than 300 meters. Each phase preserved the previous one, encasing it within new terraces, while new murals, staircases, and altars were added. This method of construction not only amplified the pyramid's mass, but also created a vertical record of the city's cultural, religious, and architectural evolution. Much of the pyramid, however, has yet to be explored. Dense earth, overgrown vegetation, and centuries of natural sediment conceal vast volumes of adobe, rubble, and volcanic material. Archaeologists rely on a combination of traditional excavation techniques, ground-penetrating radar, and careful surveying to identify areas of interest, but the process is painstaking. Unlike the sharply defined pyramids of Egypt, whose stone contours are obvious, Cholula blends almost seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. Its artificial nature is most evident when viewed from above, or when tunnels penetrate its interior, but for centuries it was mistaken for an ordinary hill. Every new discovery challenges assumptions about ancient Mesoamerican civilization. The complexity of Cholula's construction, its layered terraces, massive volume, hidden chambers, and integration of art and ritual, speaks to a level of engineering sophistication that continues to astonish scholars. The pyramid was not simply built for display or religious devotion. It embodies an understanding of materials, structural stability, and long-term planning that parallels some of the most remarkable engineering achievements anywhere in the world. The use of compacted earth, adobe, and rubble, combined with careful layering and reinforcement, allowed the pyramid to survive centuries of rainfall, seismic activity, and neglect. Researchers have also uncovered evidence that the pyramid's hidden chambers were used for more than ceremonial purposes. Archaeological findings suggest that some interior spaces may have served as storage areas, ritual repositories, or even sacred tombs. Murals preserved within these tunnels depict scenes of communal drinking, fertility rituals, and symbolic imagery, revealing the pyramid as a dynamic environment in which architecture, art, and human activity were inseparable. Each excavation adds new depth to our understanding, highlighting the sophistication, ambition, and cultural significance of Cholula. Despite decades of study, the scale of the pyramid continues to defy comprehension. Its total volume, estimated at more than 4.45 million cubic meters, surpasses that of the Great Pyramid of Giza, yet it remains largely hidden from view. Visitors standing atop the summit perceive only a gentle grassy slope. The vast interior, layered with centuries of construction, remains invisible. This concealment is both accidental and deliberate. The builders incorporated previous pyramids within successive expansions, preserving earlier structures even as new generations reshaped the monument. In doing so, they created a complex architectural palimpsest, a living record of human achievement encoded in adobe and earth. The rediscovery of Cholula also reshapes our understanding of Mesoamerican urbanism and religious practice. The pyramid was the focal point of one of the largest cities in ancient Mesoamerica, a center of pilgrimage, ritual, and civic life. Its continuous expansion over nearly 1,000 years indicates sustained social, religious, and political organization, as well as the ability to mobilize labor and resources on an extraordinary scale. Each layer of construction is a testament to both human ambition and communal effort, preserved beneath the veneer of a seemingly natural hill. Modern technology has opened new possibilities for understanding the pyramid without disturbing its fragile structure. Ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR scanning, and 3D modeling allow archaeologists to map its interior and estimate the volume of unexcavated sections. Each advance reveals new chambers, hidden stairways, and previously unknown layers of construction. Even as scholars reconstruct the pyramid's history, they are continually reminded of the limits of human knowledge. The monument is vast, ancient, and complex beyond expectation. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Cholula is its enduring mystery. Unlike Giza, whose shape and size have been measured and documented in detail for centuries, Cholula conceals much of its essence beneath soil, grass, and centuries of accumulated history. Its hidden mass challenges assumptions about the scale of ancient Mesoamerican engineering and demands a re-evaluation of what civilizations could accomplish using local materials, labor organization, and incremental construction methods. The pyramid continues to surprise, reminding us that history is never fully revealed, and that even the largest human constructions may lie partially invisible, awaiting rediscovery. In many ways, the Great Pyramid of Cholula stands as a monument to patience and persistence, both for its builders and for the modern scholars who continue to study it. The pyramid is not a completed story. It is a living archive, gradually revealing its secrets layer by layer. Every tunnel explored, every mural documented, every chamber mapped adds to our understanding. But the monument's full scale, complexity, and cultural significance remain only partially grasped. The rediscovery of Cholula reminds us that human ambition can leave traces that endure far beyond the lifetimes of the societies that created them. The pyramid's hidden mass, buried terraces, and preserved murals speak to the continuity of human effort, devotion, and imagination. Even today, as researchers probe its interior and map its contours, the Great Pyramid of Cholula remains partially hidden, still mysterious, and still waiting to reveal its secrets to those who dare to look beneath the surface. Do you have any questions here? Share with us. Across the continents, the pyramids of Egypt have long captured our imagination. The sharp, soaring edges of Giza dominate the desert horizon, a testament to human ambition, geometry, and devotion. They are icons of permanence, monuments to kings who sought immortality through stone and symmetry. Their fame has echoed across millennia, shaping the way we think about ancient civilizations, engineering, and the human desire to reach for the divine. And yet, for all their verticality and precision, Giza is not the largest pyramid on Earth. That distinction belongs to a place far from the sands of the Nile, deep in the heart of central Mexico, where a quiet green hill rises above the city of Cholula. At first glance, the hill appears unremarkable. Its gentle slopes are covered with grass, trees, and shrubs. On its summit, the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de los Remedios perches calmly, a colonial-era church that has stood for centuries. Visitors climb the steps, take photographs, and enjoy the view of the valley below. Few realize that beneath their feet lies a secret of staggering scale. The Great Pyramid of Cholula, the largest pyramid ever constructed by humanity, a man-made mountain that defies expectation and comprehension. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt, Cholula does not rise sharply into the sky. Its height, modest by comparison at around 25 meters, conceals a vast and intricate story of expansion, accumulation, and architectural ingenuity. The pyramid spreads outward across a base of roughly 300 by 315 meters, covering nearly 95,000 square meters of the valley floor. Its total volume, more than 4.5 million cubic meters, exceeds that of Giza, revealing a monument designed not to pierce the heavens, but to dominate the land itself. It is a structure conceived for continuity, endurance, and communal purpose, rather than for the glorification of a single ruler. The Great Pyramid of Cholula is not a single construction, but the result of centuries of layered building. Archaeologists have identified at least 6 superimposed pyramids embedded within the hill, each representing a distinct era, culture, and architectural style. Construction began around 300 BCE during the pre-classic period, with the earliest platform known as La Conejera rising only modestly above the valley. Over the following centuries, successive civilizations expanded the structure, layering adobe, earth, gravel, and volcanic material to create terraces, ceremonial platforms, and hidden chambers. Each generation left its mark, preserving the work of its predecessors while contributing to a growing monument that became more than architecture. It became a repository of history, ritual, and cultural memory. The materials used in construction reflect both ingenuity and adaptability. Unlike Egyptian limestone, the builders of Cholula relied primarily on sun-dried adobe bricks combined with compacted earth and rubble. These materials may seem fragile, yet in vast layers they form an extraordinarily stable mass. Interior fills were carefully compacted and reinforced, terraces were designed to channel water and resist erosion, and the slopes were engineered to survive seasonal rains and seismic activity. The pyramid was designed to endure, not through the rigidity of stone, but through the resilience of mass and careful planning. Over centuries, nature softened its edges and vegetation took root, transforming the pyramid into the hill that would hide its human origin for hundreds of years. The pyramid was the heart of a vast sacred city. Cholula itself covered more than 150 hectares, making it one of the largest urban centers in ancient Mesoamerica. Pilgrims traveled across the region to visit its temples, and the pyramid served as the ceremonial and spiritual nucleus. Dedicated primarily to Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity, the pyramid was a site of ritual, processions, offerings, and public ceremonies. Murals discovered in hidden chambers depict communal drinking, fertility rites, and symbolic representations of the natural and spiritual worlds, reminding us that the pyramid was not merely a monument, but a living environment, actively inhabited and spiritually animated over centuries. Despite its enormous scale and centrality to ancient life, the pyramid eventually fell silent. Political shifts, the decline of trade routes, and the dispersal of urban populations brought an end to large-scale construction and ceremonial activity. Without maintenance and human presence, the terraces eroded, vegetation spread, and the structure gradually merged with the landscape. By the time Spanish colonists arrived in the 16th century, the artificial nature of the hill was obscured. Mistaking it for a natural formation, they erected a church atop its summit, further concealing the remarkable architecture below. It was not until the 20th century that modern archaeology began to peel back the layers of history hidden within the hill. Systematic tunneling revealed staircases, chambers, altars, and murals that had been preserved for centuries. Ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation techniques have mapped portions of the pyramid, yet the majority remains unexcavated. Each new discovery reveals a structure of staggering complexity, a man-made mountain built by generations over centuries, a testament to human ingenuity and endurance. The pyramid's layered construction also offers insight into a philosophy of time and continuity. Each phase preserved the previous one, creating a monument that is simultaneously historical record and sacred site. Whereas the pyramids of Egypt are frozen in the perfection of a single moment, an eternal tomb for one king, Cholula embodies evolution, adaptation, and collective memory. It is a mountain that grew with the city, reflecting the faith, labor, and imagination of generations who believed they were shaping something eternal, a sacred bridge between earth and sky. Today, the hill appears tranquil, almost ordinary. Tourists stroll across its slopes, children play on its terraces, and the church continues to mark the summit. Yet beneath this quiet green exterior lies an astonishing truth. The largest pyramid humanity has ever built remains hidden, partially buried, and partially unknown. Its scale, history, and cultural significance are revealed only to those willing to look deeper, to follow the tunnels, study the layers, and imagine the centuries of human devotion encoded in adobe and earth. The Great Pyramid of Cholula stands as a testament to the power of human creativity, faith, and perseverance. It challenges assumptions about the nature of monumental architecture, revealing that greatness is not solely defined by height or visibility, but by mass, endurance, and the capacity to embody generations of cultural, spiritual, and social endeavor. It is a monument that integrates human ambition with natural processes, surviving centuries of neglect, erosion, and obscurity, yet continuing to inspire awe and wonder. Ultimately, Cholula reminds us that human hands are capable of shaping the landscape itself, creating monuments that endure not by defying nature, but by working in harmony with it. Beneath that quiet hill lies a mountain of devotion, labor, and imagination. It is a mountain not of stone, but of human will and ingenuity. The church atop its summit may appear ordinary, and the grassy slopes unremarkable, but every step across the hill covers centuries of history, thousands of lives, and the largest pyramid humanity has ever built. It is a mountain created not by nature, not by geological time, but by human hands, a man-made mountain, silent yet monumental, hidden yet vast, enduring yet only partially revealed. It is a reminder that human ambition can shape the world in ways that defy immediate perception, leaving legacies that endure far beyond the lives of those who created them, waiting patiently to be discovered, understood, and marveled at. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey through the universe on Frontiers of Infinity. If this glimpse into the unknown has sparked your curiosity, be sure to subscribe and join us, where we unravel the darkest mysteries of space.